Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast, dedicated to parents and anyone else who loves someone in active addiction. Education is a powerful tool in breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and ultimately helping individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges of addiction. With Donna Marston, author of Peeling the Onion and Sharing Without Shame. So take a deep breath and grab some tissues as we uncover the stories of love, courage, and unwavering support in the face of adversity, as Donna and her guests share their stories without shame. Because when we share our stories without shame, we inspire others to do the same.
Hi, and welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast. My name is Donna Marston, and I'm your host today. And today's podcast is brought to you by Snap Bands. And this is my Snap Band, and it says blessings on it. I never thought of myself as a blessing till I received the packaging, and I thought, oh, that's cool. It's a cool way to look at myself. But mine says blessed, and it's for cognitive brain therapy. You're having bad thoughts or cravings or whatever, you just give it a little snap and it snaps you right out of it. If you're interested in getting one, you can go to Snap Bands, that's snapbandz.com. And in under comments, write in SWOS or Sharing Without Shame so that they know that you heard about it from us. So today I would like to introduce you to Sabrina, who is an author, therapist, and expert in anxiety management and practical strategies. Sabrina helps individuals understand the roots of their core beliefs and the impact these beliefs have on their self-worth, behaviors, and emotional well-being. In her book, Not Good Enough, you can see it in the background, is Understanding Your Core Belief in Anxiety. She guides readers through the journey of uncovering challenging and transforming negative self-perceptions to build confidence, resilience through her compassionate approach. Sabrina empowers people to create long-lasting positive changes in their lives. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
You're very welcome. So my first question is, what would you like to share without shame?
I am not busy.
In what regard?
I think busyness is this thing it's almost a bit of a bragging right to be busy. And I make a conscious effort to not be busy. I have a lot of things going on in my life. I just finished a book tour. I have full-time clients. I've got a lot of things going on, but I work very, very hard at not busying myself. I make sure I have downtime every day and I don't get caught up in the busyness of our world.
Oh, I love that. Good for you.
Thanks. It's
That's
it's
awesome.
taken a long time. I definitely was busy for a while, but life is a lot more calm and settled when you really just focus on not being busy.
Do you think that comes with age? Do you think that's something as you mature, you kind of like, I don't want all that.
I don't know. I think there was something about the older generation where you needed to be busy. You didn't just sit and watch a show or relax. You had to be busy growing up. And so when I think about like my dad's generation, they're all pretty busy. They don't sit, they don't stop. They're always going and doing things. So again, it's finding that balance where I need to be productive and enjoy my life and I'm doing things, but I also need to just take time for myself to just sit. We don't like to sit in our own thoughts.
Right? How true is
Yeah.
that? So, can you explain to everybody that many people, cope with uncomfortable emotions, what you just said, by distracting themselves with activities or self-medicating, right? With drugs, alcohol, people, smoking, that takes up time, shopping, TV, with that one drives me crazy. I'm not a TV watcher, so they have these behaviors that seem to affect their short term, yet ultimately increase their anxiety. How can you speak to that?
Sure. So I agree. I think the vast majority of us are very, very good at suppressing and avoiding dealing with our emotions. We're taught basically, even from young children, not to feel our emotions. A small child falls and scrapes their knee and they're crying. And what do the parents want to do? Want to try to make them feel better. When really crying is a natural response to falling and scraping your knee. But my child feels emotion. Well, that creates emotion in me. I don't want to feel my emotion, so I need to shut down my child's emotion. So even starting at really, really young age, we are taught to suppress and push down our emotions. There's all kinds of coping strategies we can use for that. Like you had mentioned, really, there's hundreds of them. Anything that we're doing to distract so we don't have to feel our emotions, we are going to be using as a more unhealthy coping strategy. When we look at coping strategies on whether they're healthy or unhealthy, a lot of people automatically assume like alcohol, unhealthy coping strategy. Objects, things don't have the capacity to be healthy or unhealthy. It's how we choose to use it that makes it healthy or unhealthy. So reading, a lot of people say, oh, reading's a really healthy coping strategy. Well, not if I'm reading until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm now late for work and I prefer the characters in my book to my own reality. Then it's an unhealthy coping strategy. So we need to look at how we're using it. We do need breaks. We do need to be able to just read and relax for a little bit. But if it's going to the extreme, if it's always being used to suppress those emotions, it's generally going to be a more unhealthy coping strategy. But if I'm using it to just kind of take a bit of a break and then get back into the game of life, then it's probably more healthy. The more we build these emotions, because every time we don't feel them, they just sit there and they gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, that impacts our anxiety level. If we look at anxiety, anxiety is lack of confidence, not believing in myself that I can handle something. A lot of people say, I have anxiety of heights. Well, if it was about heights, every single person would have anxiety of heights, and not everyone does. If I don't believe I can handle heights, I'm going to have anxiety. If I believe I can't handle height or can handle heights, I'm not going to have anxiety. So anxiety is a reflection of what we believe about ourselves. And so if I'm full up with emotion because I've been suppressing them for decades, and I'm barely holding it together, keeping track of all the emotions that I've got. Now, any little thing that happens in my day that creates emotion is going to feel too overwhelming. I'm going to feel like I can't handle it. So the more emotion we're holding in, the more insecurity, self-doubt we're going to have in being able to handle life, the more anxiety we're going to have.
Wow, interesting. So when my son was in active addiction, I never thought of it as anxiety. I never thought I had anxiety. I'm learning, I think I do have a little bit. But looking back, that fear of will he survive this? That all that fear. So I think I really had a lot of anxiety, but not identifying it.
And I think that's a very, very common thing. Anxiety is often something that just gradually progresses over time, and we just adjust and adapt, adjust and adapt, and adjust and adapt. And we don't really realize how significant it is because we've just slowly kind of gotten used to it and figured out how to cope with it. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We often kind of know what anxiety looks like when it's the stereotypical anxiety that we see on movies or in TV. But we often don't think about the little tiny subtle symptoms of anxiety, like clenching my fist, chewing my lip, playing with my skin around my fingers, holding my breath. All of these things are symptoms of anxiety lower on the scale. So we need to become more aware of what our anxiety actually looks like so we can better understand our anxiety.
That's interesting because I would catch myself holding my breath when I was going through those years. And when I do coaching with parents, I'll remind them to remember to breathe because
Yeah.
pay attention. You're probably holding your breath, and they don't realize it till we talk about it, and then they're like, "Oh my goodness, wow, I didn't know I was
Yeah.
doing that."
Yeah,
It's
for
just so
sure.
unconscious.
And sighing is another big one, right?
Oh,
Sigh- Sighing is usually a sign that I've either been holding my breath or
oh,
I've had really shallow breathing. And so it is also another symptom of anxiety. So if you sigh a lot, it's meaning that you're not getting enough oxygen into your lungs because you're holding your breath or you're shallow breathing. Mhm.
I think I have shallow breathing. Interesting. Oh my goodness. So how would you describe a core belief? What does that look like?
Right. So our core belief is something that kind of develops right from when we're born. Honestly, I can almost even predict what it's going to be just looking at the parents, because parents pass down that core belief. So often for people, that core belief is feeling not good enough, not important, not valued, especially if they've had a lot of trauma, a lot of chaos, they have higher anxiety, they struggle more with self-doubt. We generally see that core belief. The other end of the spectrum is the core belief good enough, important, and valued. Now, nobody's 100% one or the other, but we often see that people are struggling a little bit more, struggle more with that core belief of not good enough, not important, not valued. And the thing about that core belief is it kind of drives everything we do. And so we're constantly trying to reinforce and support that core belief. The vast majority of the time, it's unconscious. We're not even aware we're really doing it. So for example, if I'm using, I go out and use, I get a break. I don't have to feel anything. It just numbs all the emotions, gets rid of everything. But now the next day, I feel like garbage. I broke promises. I, did things that I regret. I
Mm.
spent money I didn't have. I embarrassed myself. Ultimately reinforces that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. So we're drawing these things that maybe give us a bit of a break where we can numb these emotions, these unhealthy
Mm.
coping strategies, but they continue to reinforce and support that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued.
And they hold a lot of power, right, over our emotions and our actions.
Absolutely. They are the driving force within us. And so if we're not even really aware of what that core belief is, it's hard to make long-term change, because ultimately, we'll see people where, they're doing really well, things are going good. We think, okay, they're doing great. And then they sabotage themselves. That's
Mhm.
that core belief. The core belief is going, we're out of balance now. We don't really believe we have the right to be doing well, because I believe I'm not good enough, not important, not valued. So I need to sabotage myself so I can go back and reinforce that core belief. So we
Mm.
need to become more aware of what that core belief is and challenge it. And even just becoming aware of that core belief and thinking about it, you're starting to challenge it, believing more good enough, important, and valued. So it's little tiny steps in changing that core belief.
Yeah. So with somebody in active addiction, 9 times out of 10, they don't love themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's about self-love. And then they have anxiety. They have those core beliefs that they're not enough. There's just all this stuff that they're
Yeah.
overloaded with. And then it just levels them to the point that they need to self-medicate.
Self-medicating, I mean, when you look at the self-medicating, really what it does is it just shuts everything off, shuts off the emotion, shuts everything off, where they get a bit of an escape for a period of time. But then they come back, and now they not only have to carry everything that they were carrying the day before, the shame, the guilt, the regret, but now they also have to carry, they screwed up again and did it one more time. So now it even reinforces that even more, makes it more and more significant. And it just becomes this cycle that continues. We look at, even Alcoholics Anonymous, the success rate in Canada for AA is about 3 to 5%. So the vast majority of people who go to AA aren't really able to stop drinking, because it's not so much about the alcohol, it's about that core belief.
Right.
Of that 3 to 5% who do stop, they often go to anger or gambling. So they're just switching from one unhealthy coping strategy to another, because they need to reinforce that core belief. That's why we really need to get better at understanding and challenging that core belief. My core belief changes. I don't need those unhealthy coping strategies anymore.
So you're saying if they no longer drink, tend to go to gambling as a new coping mechanism.
Very, very common for people struggling with alcohol or drugs to, if they stop successfully, the chances that they end up going to gambling is very high.
Wow.
Yeah. Just switches from one unhealthy coping strategy to the other, because we still need to feed that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. Anger is
Like,
another one.
and this is me talking, so don't judge. No, I'm just saying to everybody who's listening,
Oh,
I find some people that have a SUD, or even people, I don't know, it's all or nothing. There's no middle road. Going for the gusto, or they're the victim and can't get out of their own way. Does that
Right.
play into all of this?
It's a symptom, again, of that core belief. So if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm not going to believe in myself as much. I'm not going to have a voice. I'm not going to trust in myself that I can make a decision. So I need to go all or none. That gray middle where I have to think through and figure out what might be best. I don't trust in myself that I can make that decision. I don't believe in myself as much. I'm going to have more anxiety. I'm not going to believe that I even have the right to figure that piece out. So I go from one extreme to the other. Then I don't have to make as many decisions. I'm either all in or all out. I don't need the gray.
And so what about somebody who just kind of coasts through and everything's middle ground? Everything's just neutral.
Again, it kind of depends on how we're using it. So if I've kind of got that water off a duck's back, I'm not really going to care about anything as a coping strategy to numb, so I never have to feel emotions. Not really very healthy. But my ultimate goal with my clients is to get to that place where things are just kind of steady. We want to go from the peaks and valleys to just more of an even flow. We don't want the roller coasters, but that's that place of believing in myself. If I believe in myself, it doesn't really matter what comes up. I'll handle it. Might not be graceful, might really hurt. I might feel a whole bunch of emotions, but I can handle that. So
Yeah.
it's okay. So the more I believe in myself, the more that core belief is good enough, important, and valued, the more I do just kind of coast or manage through life. That we would see would be more of a healthy use of doing that. So again, it depends on why we're doing the behavior more than it is really about the behavior.
And isn't the core belief typically because people don't feel good enough?
For sure. And that not good enough comes from a lot of different things. Growing up where there's chaos, volatility, fighting, arguing, those kind of things. And one of the things is growing up where we're not taught how to feel our emotions, which is the vast majority of our homes. And so if we grow up where we're not able to talk about and feel our emotions, I'm going to have more self-doubt because I'm just carrying emotion. Everything we do creates emotion, right? Logging in and having technical issues creates emotion. Driving in traffic creates emotion. Forgetting to take the chicken out for supper creates emotion. Everything we do, all these little things create emotion. That doesn't include all the stuff that we've been carrying with us for years and years and years. So that emotion gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm not going to believe in myself that I can handle as much because I just got so much going on already. I don't have the capacity to take on anything more. So it reinforces that not good enough, not important, not valued core belief.
Do you find that, I did a thing on addiction over the generations. And so, like, my grandparents were a generation where basically keep your mouth shut, keep the peace, and just move along. And then I grew up in a generation, baby boomers, children are to be seen and not heard. Don't talk about your emotion. I'm highly sensitive. And I was always told, oh, you're too sensitive, let it go. And then you get to like the 40, I don't know, I think they're on the cusp of being millennials. I'm not sure what the generation is. And they're a little bit better. But I think as you get down to the younger, like 20-year-olds, they're very open about their emotions. And however, I think they carry a lot of anxiety because a lot of them went through COVID at young ages, that shifted their lives.
Right. I agree. I think that older generation is definitely just pretend it's not there. Suck it up, press it, push it down, pretend it's not really there. Well, it comes out in other areas. Now we've got the younger generation where we're more open. We're open to talk about emotions and talk about different things. We haven't taken it to that next level of, so now what? How do I manage it? How do I cope with it? So I see a lot of younger people having a lot of anxiety because now they're acknowledging all these emotions, but they don't really know how to manage it. So, and then we just often with anxiety, just avoid. Oh, I can't do that. My anxiety is too high. Well, the worst thing you can do to make anxiety worse is avoid it. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need to get better at recognizing, okay, it's there. What's my plan? What are the strategies I'm going to use to challenge myself through those emotions? So I realize I can handle feeling those emotions rather than there's emotions I need to stop.
Yeah. So, and then if their parents aren't of that mindset, It's like, suck it up, buttercup.
Exactly. And most of the parents aren't, because they grew up in that generation of there's no emotions, don't feel anything, just push it down, pretend it's not there. So it can be a really overwhelming space to be in that place where you can now feel your emotions, but they don't know how to cope with them. So they're more open to them, but they don't have that capacity to, okay, what do I need to do to manage it? So scary, very scary to have all these emotions and not know what to do with them, not understand how they work. That's scary for sure. It's going to create more anxiety.
So do you teach coping skills for that?
For sure, definitely. We talk a lot about coping strategies, especially in the beginning, coping strategies for managing things, but then we're also going back and figuring out where is your core belief and how has it developed over the years and what do we need to do to challenge and change that core belief. So we're kind of using both of those together where we're looking at strategies, but we're also really working on how do we challenge and change that core belief. Now, if I create strategies to manage my anxiety, I start to notice what my anxiety looks like when it's, say, a 4 out of 10, as opposed to waiting until it's a 10 out of 10. I'm going to feel more confident in myself that I can handle things because I'm getting better at managing my anxiety. If I'm building more confidence, I'm challenging and developing that core belief good enough, important, and valued. So they all kind of work together and feed in with each other.
So how'd your book come about?
I was a teacher for 20 years, and towards the end of my teaching career, I was a school counselor. And I just thought that's what I was going to do. That's what I would retire in. I was very content. I loved being a teacher. I went to a workshop that was presented by a man named Tony Martins. It was a workshop on suicide. And at the end of the 3-day workshop, I just thought, this is what I need to do. It was all focused on this core belief: not good enough, not important, not valued. And so I went back and forth with Tony for about a year, and he decided to take me on and teach me his model of therapy. And so I quit teaching in 2010 and started my own private practice. And within 6 months, I had a waiting list. And right now, my waiting list is over a year long. Helping someone challenge and change their core belief doesn't happen in 6, 8, 10 sessions. Most of my clients are with me a year and a half, sometimes even longer. So I go slowly through my waiting list. And I hate having to tell people, sorry, there's nothing I can do. So I decided to write a book so I could at least provide a resource that looks at things from that core belief of not good enough as a way to help people who aren't able to access counseling.
Because how many people in the world do you feel that do you think have that feeling, I'm not good enough? I mean, at some time or another, we've all felt that.
Absolutely. I think everyone does at certain times in their life, for sure. There are some people who have it much more significantly than others. But of course, yeah, I think we've all had that time where we felt not good enough, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something, going through the teenage years, those are tough years where you see the perfect cheerleader, that's just perfect and everybody loves her. And then you're the awkward kid and you feel left out and you are left out and you don't feel good enough. But I think even that cheerleader or the hero of the football team, they all have those feelings. They're just better at hiding it. They're better actors and actresses.
Right. And what I see in working with people that are, kind of like the cheerleader or the football team, the models, they often have a very significant core belief of not good enough, not important, not valued, because they feel everyone just looks at them by their surface. They don't really see the inside and what's really going on. So they often feel that core belief very significantly as well.
And a lot of people don't see beyond that show.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
they see what they want to see and they compare you to, I mean, I was as a kid compared to this girl who was little and cute and there's no way I could be her. It
Yeah.
couldn't be. But and
Yeah.
that's how you take kids down when you do stuff like that and it's really hard and then you don't feel good enough, but then it brings, your self-worth when you don't feel good enough moving into any type of a relationship as a teenager, dating, as an adult, getting married and having children. It all kind of trickles down, right? Whatever you don't
Absolutely.
feel is now going to be put on these little innocent kids because adults didn't take the time to heal that little kid, that teenager, their adult self, and then they carry it in.
I was just going to say, and I think even more than didn't take the time, a lot of us didn't even know we needed to. It's our normal. You don't know anything different. So why would you think there needs to be something different that you need to change? So that awareness piece is a really significant piece, because a lot of people don't even really realize that they should be doing something different, that they're having a negative impact, or they swing from one side to the other, right? You have a parent, let's say, who struggles with alcohol, and the child grows up and says, oh, my parent chose alcohol over me all the time. That's it. I'm never drinking. And so the child grows up and says, I'm never going to drink. And they end up having kids. I talk to the kids and I say, how do you feel in your home? I'm not good enough. No matter what I do, it's never enough for my parent. I talk to the parent says, what do you mean I never drank? Like my dad made me feel like that all the time because he drank and I swore I was never going to drink, and I don't drink. Why doesn't my child feel that way? Well, because you're short-tempered, because you're impatient, because you don't really spend a lot of quality time with them, because you pick up your phone over spending time with your child. It reinforces the same thing. Yes, you're not drinking, but there's other things that are happening because the parent still believes they are not good enough. So it trickles down. The behaviors can look different, but that core belief trickles down.
And then what do? When you come to the realization, like, oh God, this is what I've done. Now what do I do to help, not only help myself, but help my young children?
And that's a scary place for a lot of people to be at. So they don't even gain that awareness. If I'm not aware, I don't have to do anything different. So a lot of people may kind of go, ooh, I maybe shouldn't be doing this, but they just deny it so they don't have to do anything different. Because taking responsibility for that's hard. As parents, we love our kids. We don't want to do anything that's going to hurt our kids. And to have to step back and go, oh, I did some things that had a negative impact on my child. That's hard. It's hard to do. It's there. I always say to my clients when we're working on that, part of what we work on is that parent-child relationship. And part of what we talk about is these are all things that they're there stuck between the two of you. We've just never really acknowledged them and dealt with them. So let's actually just take them out, own them for what they are, so you can acknowledge it instead of running from it, hiding from it, pretending it's not there. That allows that relationship to become closer, because now we're addressing those things that we know are there. We just don't really want to deal with, or we don't know how to deal with.
Donna Marston knows what it's like to face the heartbreak of having a child in active addiction. She found a way out of that suffering and is now dedicated to helping parents navigate their painful journey with compassion and clarity. Donna provides a safe and supportive space for parents to share your feelings, gain insight, and learn how to prioritize your well-being. Through personalized wellness plans, she'll teach you how to establish healthy boundaries, break free from enabling behaviors, and develop better coping skills to foster a healthier relationship with your addicted teen or adult child. As a coach, author, and advocate, Donna combines her personal experience with tailored strategies to guide families toward hope and healing. Every new client receives a complimentary copy of her book, Sharing Without Shame, which is filled with inspiring stories of resilience. If you're ready to take the first step toward healing your heart and reclaiming your life, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com to book a session with Donna today.
I'm curious. So I work in the world of recovery, and I see, especially early recovery, I see it's like everyone's falling in love. You see a lot of people, they're in and out of relationships. Instead of having a relationships with themselves, somebody's better than nobody. If somebody likes or shows a little bit, and they're full-fledged alcohol or drugs, the other partner doesn't do anything. They're just looking for love. Everybody's looking for love in that relationship, but that person will take anybody because somebody's better than nobody. Do you see that much in your practice?
All the time. Yes. And not just with that, addicts. Generally, people, if that core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, if I'm in a relationship, especially a toxic relationship, I don't have to focus on me. A relationship is a great distraction. I can always focus on what he needs to do better and the problems he has rather than me. We get in a fight or an argument. I can think about that. So that's a great distraction. As long as I'm focusing on my partner, blaming my partner, telling my partner what they need to do differently, that's all time I am wasting, not focusing on my own healing journey and what I need to do differently. That core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. I need someone to love me. Someone, please, please, somebody just love me. And someone says, hi, how are you? And I need to get in there really fast and we need to move really quick and we need to move in together because once you get to know me, you're going to realize I'm not good enough because that's what I believe about myself. So if we're now living together, it's harder for you to leave. And so we get into these really quick relationships because honestly, both people are feeling the same way. I'm not good enough. I need to get in quick so before she realizes. She's thinking, I need to get in there really quick before he realizes. And so we move into these really quick relationships, which are then going to create more problems, more distractions, even the honeymoon stage, right? Where there's lots of intimacy and sex and connection and cuddling, all that stuff creates a sense of feeling loved because we're being touched, but I'm not actually feeling really loved and connected because I haven't allowed myself to be vulnerable in the relationship and really put myself out there because that's too scary for me. If I feel not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm not going to feel vulnerable. That's way too scary. But if we cuddle on the couch and you touch me and rub my skin, that creates oxytocin, dopamine, makes me feel loved and connected chemically without actually having to really be vulnerable and put myself out there and connect with my partner. People would rather have that chaos than sit in their own. As you're creating new relationships, you need to window shop, right? You got to get to know that person. See, are they good enough for you? Are they going to be respectful, kind, considerate? Even what does a healthy relationship look like? The vast majority of us, we may have an idea what we don't want, but we don't really even know what we do want. So we need to even take time. It's one of the activities I do with my clients is what is a healthy relationship? What does it actually look like? What happens with duties, with finances, with respect, with all those areas? Now I have a bit of a goal of what I can look towards. My core belief is challenging and changing to good enough, important, and valued. So I believe I have the right to a healthy relationship. Now I'm okay to go slow and take my time and sort through things. But if I'm just scrambling to try to deal with my own core belief, I'm going to settle for whatever. And we see people repeating the same cycles over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because it reinforces and supports that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued.
Yeah. And then when they do the healing and then they look around and go, oh, this isn't working. Now, moving forward, do I want to be alone and start over again? And can I find somebody who's healthy, or healthier while that person's getting healthy, right? And that,
Yeah,
I would think that's there's fear around that.
absolutely. A ton of fear, right? We have to be vulnerable, put ourselves out there, trust in ourselves that we can handle being alone. And if I've spent my whole life running from being alone, it's terrifying.
Talk about long-lasting change in how we see ourselves. What does that look like? Do you have classes for that we can move forward and have the empathy and compassion for ourselves in learning to love ourselves? And I'll tell you, I had taken this class years ago and they gave everybody a mirror and you had to look in the mirror and say, I love you, Donna. And then they tell you, once you can conquer that, seeing your face and saying it, and nobody could do it, by the way. This is many, many, many years ago. And then you're supposed to do it unclothed and start. So you'd love your body. That's work, doing that. Do you exercises like that with your people?
We do things around, having a voice and giving myself a voice for sure, in that confidence piece and building that confidence within ourselves. The book, you read a bit of information, it explains a little bit about a core belief, and then you apply it in an activity to your own personal experiences. So it's kind of a workbook as you're going through and really getting a better understanding of how your core belief developed over the years, and then what you need to do to challenge it. And a big thing that we really focus on is around the emotions piece. What are the emotions that we're feeling? If I've spent my whole life pushing them down, to now try to think about what I'm feeling, my brain just goes blank. And so I give, all my clients get a list of a whole bunch of different emotions. And if I'm feeling something and I go to that list, the emotions that I'm feeling, they will jump off the page at me. So now I'm getting better at understanding just by reading them. Don't read them out loud yet, because that's too overwhelming. But just reading those emotions, I'm allowing myself to feel it just a little bit. So it's not too overwhelming. It's not too scary. After we're comfortable with that, then we start with saying the emotions out loud, where I'm actually giving them a voice. That's going to make me feel them even more. So we work on becoming better at feeling our emotions. Then we also we pick things apart. We really believe we need to go in very, very small steps in sorting through and figuring things out. So if a client comes into me and says, I got in a fight with my partner this weekend, I'll ask them, okay, so what did you do well? What do you think you didn't do well? How are you going to challenge and change things for next time? And so we go through and pick it apart, so they're getting a really good understanding in reflection of, I actually did do something well. I didn't think I did, but there was a couple things that I did well. These are things that I didn't do well that I need to work on and be aware of. And this is my plan moving forward. Now, because I've made a real conscious effort of figuring that out, there's an increased likelihood that I'm going to use at least some of those things next time. It's a bit of a process as we go through to get to that final stage. We can't just automatically expect to do it, but we need to really break these things down into really small pieces so we gain a better understanding of what's really going on. Rather than looking at it globally, we need to look at it in very fine detail.
Yeah. And I can tell you, back in the day, I mean, many, many years ago, my son, by the grace of God, has 16 and a half years of recovery. And when I was in the midst of all of it, I was so numb. I couldn't tell you a feeling. And I started one of my savings grace, it was having a Reiki session. But then I found an emotional scale, and it was 1 through 20 or 1 through 22. When I saw that I was number 22, I was full of despair. I was living in fear. I was depressed, and I forget what the other one was. It like hit me in the chest because I was so numb. I couldn't tell you a feeling that I had. So I printed this out. I put it on my desk, and every day I would look at it. And I remember the first day I was working on doing this activity, I saw anger, and I went up, I took a pillow and I beat the crap out of my bed because I was angry and I was finally letting it out. I was angry because I was fearful and I had all this stuff. And so now I keep myself between 1 and 7. If I get to number 8, boredom, all bets are off that I'm not going to vibrate down to some of those unhealthier feelings and feel numbed out because I don't want to deal with them because it's painful. And when you do, for me, when I started to heal, I was in the fetal position, and I would go through these times of almost like shedding a piece of myself that no longer served me. Right. And that not enough, and I'm too sensitive, or all these things that made me feel like I wasn't enough. And then unfortunately later in life, I find out a lot of those things that were fed to me that helped me feel like I wasn't enough were really gifts that I had I was more than enough.
It's all about perception, right? And so the way we look at something, I say to my clients, if you want to look for the positive, you'll always find the positive. If you want to look for the negative, you will always find the negative. So realizing those things and looking at them a bit differently can be significant for sure. Yeah. And that, if you've never felt emotions, to now have to feel emotion is vulnerable.
It's
And we do
scary.
not like to feel vulnerable. Most of us, especially, people who were hurt as children, they felt vulnerable. And so they learned, I'm never feeling that again. And so
Yeah.
they shut that emotion off. Well, then all these other emotions make us feel vulnerable. We used to say it was weak, right? Because if it's weak, then I can justify not going there, right? I don't want to be weak. Well, vulnerable is really what it is. And we need to get better at being able to feel vulnerable, feel fear. Once we realize I can feel those and I'm okay on the other side, now it's not as scary for me to feel it. I'm okay to feel those emotions. I'm okay to feel vulnerable. I'm going to be able to feel my emotions. But if we're scared of feeling our emotions, we're not going to feel them. We just shut them off.
And in the big scheme of things, being vulnerable is having courage and showing strength.
It takes incredible courage and strength to feel vulnerable, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we say is you have to be willing to feel those emotions that we maybe are more uncomfortable in order to feel all the emotions. So a lot of my clients will say, I just want to feel loved and connected. And I say, okay, how do you feel about fear, rejection, and vulnerability? They say, oh, no, I don't want to feel those ones. I said, well, your capacity to feel loved and connected is only as strong as your ability to feel vulnerable, fear, and rejection. If you're
Mm,
not willing to feel those, you're going to keep everybody at a bit of a distance. You're not going to let them in. You're not going to truly love and feel loved and connected because you can't allow yourself to feel vulnerable and feel fear and feel the fear of rejection.
mm. Is it true that if you don't love yourself, no one can ever love you enough?
I agree, but I think that's kind of comes from myself. If I don't love myself, even if someone does love me, I'm going to reject them because that doesn't fit.
Right.
Right. And I have to perceive that as they don't love me. Plus, my core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, unloved. I am going to be drawn to people who reinforce and support that core belief. So I'm not going to be drawn to the people who could love me at a deeper level. I'm going to be drawn to the people who are willing to love me about as much as I'm willing to love myself, because that's about how much they love themselves too. So we're usually drawn to people at about that same level. So
Yeah.
what we see is as people get healthier, they start being drawn to other people who are more healthy as well. A lot of my
Hmm.
clients, when they come in, they say, there's no healthy people out there. Well, there are. They're just not hanging out with you because you don't believe you're good enough. So you're
Right.
not hanging out with those people that
Yeah.
want to treat you with dignity and respect and all those kind of things. That it doesn't fit, right?
Yeah.
I get a boyfriend who treats me with respect and dignity. Ugh, he's so clingy. Dump him. Don't want to have anything to do with him, right? When really it's just he's probably healthier than me. I just don't want to admit it. Now, maybe
Right.
he is clingy and needy and insecure, and his core belief is the same. But we generally see no, that's too much. That's too scary, too much responsibility, too much intimacy. Don't do it.
Interesting. So
Mhm.
as we wrap up, where can people get your book?
So I'm available on Amazon, Amazon in Canada, Amazon in the US, Amazon UK, Australia, pretty much all the Amazons I'm available on. I also have a website, trobakholistic.org. It's got links to all my social media. It's got a lot of information on there. It also has links to purchasing my book in Canada and the US.
Any words of wisdom that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Just keep challenging yourself little by little. Don't try to take giant steps, just baby steps. Awareness, be aware of that core belief. Is it being triggered? Not good enough, not important, not valued? Acknowledge it. You don't have to change it. Just acknowledge, ooh, there's that core belief, not good enough there. Even just acknowledging it is allowing you to believe more in yourself. You can handle dealing with it. That creates that core belief, good enough, important, and valued. So just little bit at a time, slow and steady.
No. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for chatting with me.
Welcome.
Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the Sharing Without Shame podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. If you're in need of emotional support, Donna offers private sessions. For more information about Donna and the services she offers, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com or email her at donna4support@comcast.net. Nothing in the Sharing Without Shame podcast is intended to establish a therapist-patient relationship or intended to replace the services of a trained therapist, doctor, or health professional, or substitute for professional mental health, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Until next time, may your faith and strength heal your heart.